Hello and welcome back to a new episode of Ayahuasca Assisted Therapy, and I'm here with Alex today, and this is our first time of meeting as well, so I'm very excited to get to know him. And I checked his website out, and he does many wonderful things that you will tell and that he will tell you about later. So thank you for coming today and being so flexible with the time, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
I always start with, and it's just a basic question of like, what brought you to the healing path in general? Because I know that you are a licensed psychotherapist, and plant medicine, was just another step on your journey. So what was originally that drawn you, into this area, and how it all started?
Really it started in my adolescence. I would say I had a very turbulent adolescent period, very depressed, dealing with a lot of just dark themes, existential crisis, my sexuality, a very conservative background that I grew up in. So it was, and my dad died when I was 10. And so just my youth was, and also we'd moved from Latin America to the US. And so there was a lot of cultural, upheaval as well. So it was kind of a challenging upbringing. And my teenage period, I was in a very dark place and really kind of doubting spirit, God, is there anything beyond the material, and a real existential crisis. I got really into the existentialist philosophy, which is pretty dim. And then I had a very powerful awakening experience with LSD in high school, and it really, like, a full-blown mystical experience, and it completely reoriented my whole understanding of everything. And that was the beginning. Then I wanted to, learn about spiritual practices. I got into Buddhism and meditation. I kept going back to psychedelics to see if I could get back to this like unitive state, and I couldn't, and plus these were like not great settings for it, recreational, concerts with friends. It just wasn't, I didn't know at the time that you could do this as an internal journey, and I just got lucky, I guess. So once I realized that the psychedelics, the way I was doing them, wasn't leading me to that, I really started getting into psychology. I got really into Jungian philosophy and psychology, and alternative spiritual practices, shamanism. I got really interested in all of that. I didn't go very far with it, but that's where it piqued my interest. And that's kind of how I got into the healing work.
Right. So you said you moved from Latin America, like you were not born in the United States?
No, I was born in Nicaragua, and I spent the first several years of my life, basically like 5 to 9, I was in Chile. And my mother's Argentine, but my dad was an American diplomat. So we traveled a lot, and I didn't really settle in the United States till I was about 10. And so that was kind of a, culture shock.
Right, totally. So having, this background, and you said that you were interested in shamanism, what was it in your tradition, or how did you know about shamanism? Because, from where I come from, I didn't even hear about shamanism until I was 20 something, and it was not in my culture or in my lineage, in any shape and form, and it was more materialistic, the environment. So how did it come into your life experience?
Yeah, also I do not come from a shamanic background or a traditional culture. It's, I grew up in a Catholic household. Everything that wasn't Jesus is, the devil. So that wasn't part of my upbringing. I guess I explored a lot at that spiritual experience, that mystical experience. It just set me on this kind of quest to find out more about what else could be going on. So I just started reading a lot. the Carlos Castaneda books definitely was, I would say, a big opening into that. I read Michael Harner's, The Way of the Shaman. And then I actually did a semester in Arizona in college, and there's the Hopi Indians are in that area, and the Yaqui as well. So we would go to some of their ceremonial gatherings that were open to the public, and started to get a little bit of exposure to Native American indigenous culture and wisdom in the US. And it's just been kind of a slow process since then of exploration and kind of trying different things or having friends introduce me to different things. But, until my journey with ayahuasca, I would say it was pretty kind of a light touch. I didn't get really serious about anything. Yeah. It was just more like seeing what's out there.
Right. And you already had a bunch of tours, I assume, or this was during while you were studying, this was happening simultaneously, or already you studied to be a therapist and
this was all before. Yeah. This was all during kind of high school, college age. When I graduated from college, I went to work in like the professional corporate world, and I really didn't like it. And I always had that interest in psychology, and I decided that, I wanted to try it and see if it was for me, because the office world was not. And so I went to graduate school out here in San Francisco. I was, I think, 24 when I started my clinical psychology program. And so there was a little gap, but basically I went right into therapy training and becoming a therapist right after school. So it kind of all carried through, really, from like my crisis in high school, my interest in college, and then going right into psychotherapy. Yeah.
Right. So, you are classically trained, but also you have more alternative training like EMDR or hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
Or other tools that you use. Do you want to say a few words about why you pick those particular tools and
Sure.
you think they are good to have in our toolbox?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely credit that with my experience with ayahuasca, and it really opened me up to how much more there is in terms of healing work to the mind than just the conscious left brain analytical mind that is engaged when we're talking in therapy. And so that when I came back, I had this whole period of living in the jungle and working with ayahuasca as a full time and at a retreat center. When I came back,
say more about that, because I thought that was before and after. So
oh no, sorry. So I had my therapy practice for many years. I worked at UCSF. I worked in private practice in San Francisco, and I really reached a point where I got bored and just felt like I was in a rut, and I didn't know if I even wanted to continue doing it. It just felt very thin, I guess is the extent. It didn't have the depth that perhaps I felt when I started. And I'd gone through another transition. My mom had passed away, and so that was a big kind of wake-up call about how short life is, and am I really doing what I want with my time and with my limited life on this planet? So I closed up everything, got rid of my apartment, sold my car, closed my practice, and I left. And I went traveling around the world for about a year and a half. And in that, and I didn't know where I was going to land. It was really like, this isn't working for me. And San Francisco had changed. It had become very tech industry dominated. It wasn't the like gay, bohemian, artsy place that I moved to. So, I was like, I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I'm going, I don't even know what I'm going to do. And I was hoping the trip would show me what's the next chapter, what kind of work, what kind of, I was really open to anything. And in that process, in that journey, I ended up in Peru in 2014. And that's when I did my first ayahuasca retreat. Even though I've been familiar with it, I have a friend who has been involved in an ayahuasca community in California for like 10, 12 years. And she kept trying to get me to come, and it didn't work out. But then I encountered it in the Amazon in the traditional setting, and it just blew me away. And I loved it immediately. And that turned into...
That's a very interesting, like, tell me more about that, because many people I talk to, and my experience was like, after the first time I was like, I never want to do this again.
There are a lot of those, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I was probably one of the very few people in that group that had this, especially for their first time. It was all love, it was all beauty, it was all light, it was just all positive. The darker, difficult, challenging ceremonies came later. And I thought, wow, I got this thing down. Ayahuasca is fantastic. I don't know why everyone's having such a hard time. This is beautiful. So I really had an amazing experience, and it opened me up to the spirit world and the world of spirits, plural, that, plants and animals and rocks and everything around us is spirit. That I'd never really understood that, and I experienced it. And it started a kind of a love affair with the medicine trees of the Amazon. The retreat center had lots of medicinal trees on the property. So, you could go on walks and like just sit and spend time with these beautiful trees and meditate with them and talk to them. And then you go into ceremony that night and you're drinking the bark of the trees in the ayahuasca, because that was my teacher's practice. He was a palero as well as an ayahuasquero, which means he works with trees, with medicine trees. And so then we'd be drinking literally the same bark from that tree. And then he would be calling in the spirit of that tree in the ceremony. So very quickly, I just developed a love for some of these medicinal trees. And, it was only a week long, but I was like, I want to come back immediately. And they say, no, don't come back right away. Take your time. I gave it about 5 months. And I went back for another retreat, and then I basically never left. And then that was 3 years of my life.
Wow. So
yeah.
I don't know if you can say where you went, or, the center.
Yeah, it was a center that's no longer operating. Outside of Iquitos. They'd been around a long time, but there were major problems with the founder, and I don't really want to get into the drama there. But it was the teacher, the Amazonian maestro, Don Alberto, is amazing. And I also just fell in love with his singing and him, and I just...
There in Peru for 3 years and studied with this person.
Yeah, I mean, I left at different times,
Right.
But basically 3 years. Yeah, the last 2 years I was working at the center as helping to run the center, and then also helping to lead the ceremonies. So it was intensive. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And you, as you say, you not just only dieted the ayahuasca, but other medicinal trees as
exactly. A lot of plant diets. He is a Sanango, Ucho Sanango, like specialist, Sananguero. I think he's done like 40 Sanango diets, something like that. So we would do Ucho Sanango, which is like kind of its own class of medicine. And then there's about a dozen medicinal trees. These are huge, huge Amazonian trees that all have different medicinal properties, and the spirits are doctor spirits. And so we would diet those. And as he would say, if you're drinking it raw, which is the diet, you're drinking the tea and you're drinking it cooked in the ayahuasca, and you're doing ceremonies, you're going to learn very quickly. And that's true. It was a very, very powerful, quick way to learn these practices.
Wow, that is super interesting. So, okay, so after 3 years, you just decided, okay, enough from the jungle, I'm going back to something. What happened?
Well, what happened was the center, I learned a really, really good lesson on how important integrity is when you're doing this work. And I noticed from the beginning what I would call something not quite right about how they handled money. It was very expensive. I could, I could just do the back of the envelope calculations. They were making a lot of money. The staff was getting paid minimum wage. All of the American staff, or foreign staff, actually, they weren't even American. They were from all over the world that were basically, along with the Peruvian staff that did like the cleaning and the cooking and supporting the event, they were the ones that supported all the guests. You know, they were the ones hand-holding and guiding and getting people into showers when they were completely blown apart, and helping them come back and staying up all night with guests. They weren't getting paid at all, and they weren't even getting the tips that the clients were giving. And so, you know, there was an agreement that the person who was running it, you know, there's like the maestro who's the head of the shamanism, but you know, he doesn't speak English, he doesn't have an administrative background, he can't run the facility. You need like kind of a Westerner to deal with the guests, and also to handle the finances, administration, bookings, all of that. And so that person, I had an agreement with him. He wanted to leave, and I was there to help run it with another apprentice. We were going to run it, and so he could leave. And the agreement was, once he left, because he had other things he wanted to do, I would start getting paid. And I spent 2 years there for free, volunteering basically, to get to the point of running the center. And we did take it over, and he did leave, but he said there wasn't enough money to, basically the business was just scraping by, and they could not afford to pay me. And he's sorry, paid me for like 2 or 3 months. And he's just like, we can't do it. So at that point I had to decide, I loved the medicine and I wanted to continue to work with it. And if it was just me and the maestro, I would have just stayed there. But I couldn't have that relationship without the whole apparatus of the retreat center, which is like its own political thing. And so I left, and I was like, well, I want to keep working with ayahuasca, but I was also a little bit tired of living in the jungle. It's a hard life. You know, some people love it. I don't. I love the trees, and that made it worth it. And I love ayahuasca, but living in the jungle is intense. And living in Iquitos, which is like this really raw, big urban industrial city in the middle of the Amazon with very little access to outside goods. You're like, it's loud. There's moto taxis 24 hours a day. It's hard to sleep. There's not a lot of green, surprisingly, because it's a dense city. So, I also was kind of like, do I really want to keep living in this area? And so that's why I left. Later, within 6 months, basically, the whole place kind of fell apart, and it was a complete disaster. All of the money issues came to the front, and the place collapsed. So everyone told me later, like, wow, you picked the perfect time to leave. And the reason why I left was the same reason why it kind of fell apart. There was just a lack of integrity around money. Something wasn't right there. I could sense it, and it's like, I can't just give all of my energy to this without being able to pay my bills and just cover my expenses. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing this up. We have some episodes on the podcast about the dark side of plant medicine and the misuse of money, sex, and power. And
yes.
I also had similar experiences when I was there, that it's almost like, a lot of people, especially the people who live in the jungle and don't really have contact, with modern society, they don't have, as you said, any understanding of money or handling money or saving money.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so, it's almost like they are children, learning to deal with money and what is,
Yeah.
and also, I understand when you are poor and you don't have, then, when you have it, it's easy to go into greed and into that it's just part of the learning experience. And definitely it's a very different cultural background and understanding. And that's why it's needed to merge these worlds, but with the right people and the right intentions, right? And this
totally agree.
So once you got back, like, wow, I bet that you had a culture shock, coming
Huge.
from Congo. How did you do that and integrate it back to this life? And then how does this 3 years influence your work and your life in general?
Well, it was a huge culture shock. It was a major adjustment, even though I had a soft landing in that a good friend of mine, at that time, the real estate and rentals and finding an apartment in San Francisco is impossible. But I got lucky that a friend of mine, her roommate moved out, and right as when I arrived, and she's like, well, you can just move in here. So in that sense, the path was smoothed for me. If I didn't find that, I would have probably moved somewhere else on the West Coast. But yeah, the culture shock was heavy. It was more, more than culture shock. It was like integration from 3 years of, imagine a 3-year long ceremony, and only now you're starting to integrate it. That's really what it felt like. Things I liked, I didn't like anymore. People that were friends, I didn't really want to spend time with anymore. People that I wasn't that close with, I really wanted to be with now, because I had changed. My values had changed, my interests had changed, my energy had changed. So I also realized I didn't really want to be in a city. The noise and the frenetic energy really got to me. And there's definitely been, I was, single gay man back in the US. San Francisco is kind of the place to be. And so that's why I moved back there. And I did end up meeting my now partner in that first year, and I'm very thankful for that. And I was like, well, then we don't really have a reason to be here anymore. So eventually we moved to Berkeley, which is a lot quieter and open, and more trees and all of that. So it was about a year, maybe longer, of integrating all that had changed in those 3+ years. So it was, I would say it was just a really intense, extended integration. I don't think I really understood integration till I came back, because I hadn't experienced it. I was still unfolding and opening, and there was more ceremonies and deeper work. It just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And so that's what it was, like a year-long integration, basically.
Yeah, and as you said, you're just a different person, so everything changes, in your life, because you are a changed person. So what were kind of those drastic changes that you could point out for people? So for example, changing priorities, like before these were my priorities and after, or some other aspect that we can give an example of people, what we're talking about when you're saying fundamental change in your life.
Yeah. I think, certainly, let's start with my relationship to work and go back to what you asked about EMDR and hypnosis. I couldn't go back and do the same therapy that I was doing. What had changed in that period was, it became clear to me, which I always knew, and which is why I was a therapist in the first place, but it became rock solid that I am here to be of service, helper, healer, whatever you want to call it. I'm here to help other people. That's it. There's no wavering around that. So that's one thing. I had a very rock solid conviction that this is the path for me. Secondly, I couldn't go back to just analytical traditional psychotherapy. I had to include altered states of consciousness in some way. So within the office setting, hypnosis, I learned a style of hypnosis called depth hypnosis, which is pioneered by a woman in the Bay Area, actually in Berkeley, named Isa Gucciardi, who's amazing shaman, Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, energy worker. She's really incredible. And a friend of mine introduced me to her and her center, which is the Center for the Sacred Stream. And she had combined hypnosis, shamanism, the shamanic journey, using hypnosis and psychotherapy and energy work into kind of one package. And so I did it. Yeah, it's really cool. That was one of the first things I did, was when I came back, was I did a week-long training with her on depth hypnosis. And I use it all the time. You're basically doing, deep journey work, soul retrieval, power retrieval, all the traditional shamanic work, using hypnosis as the vehicle. And it's really effective. It really works. And there's a tremendous depth that comes with it.
Never heard about this. I never thought about this, but that could totally work. That's so
Yeah.
like, yeah.
It's a trance, right? It's just a different kind of trance instead of the shamanic drum. And that's why she did it. She's like, I couldn't do shamanic drumming in my like therapy office with all my other therapists around. So this is something designed for people to do in like an office setting. So
to put people into an altered state of consciousness, and then you
yeah,
work there. That's what
exactly.
yeah, I used breath work for that. Like I never even thought
Yeah.
about that
Yeah. I mean,
this idea.
exactly. I mean, breath work, all of these things, you don't have to do ayahuasca to shift your consciousness, right? There's many other tools available and that are more accessible to some people who, you know, can't or don't feel comfortable doing plant medicines. And EMDR does something similar. It's a slightly altered state of consciousness using bilateral stimulation of sound or light or sometimes vibrating pads, but basically alternating, stimulating the brain left and right creates a trance that allows you to access more than what you could access just talking to me about some problem you had. So that was the big change.
And let's talk about a little bit that why did you think after your ayahuasca experience that we need these tools in therapy? Why do you think
Because I saw how much more there is to the psyche, even the mind body, if you will, than what we're aware of is like literally the tip of the iceberg. There's so much going on. There is so much intelligence. There's so much stored inside of us. There's so much wisdom. And also so much shadowy material as well, things that have been tucked away just so we could live our lives, but they affect us. And you need to go deeper to access that and to clear that and to heal that.
Yes, absolutely. And this going deeper, I think, is that what brought a lot of therapists from classical psychotherapy like myself, you know, to learning different tools. And especially I think with like just serious childhood trauma, you have such a fortress around that your psyche that I don't think traditional talk therapy can touch that like ever, you know. That's people are in therapy for 10 years and they still have this problem. That's not
totally
way of going around it. And that was for me, you know, again, like from going from psychology, classical psychology, to alternative healing and energy healing and chakras and yoga therapy and breath work and all this kind of stuff, that brought me, you know, another aspect of the side, you know, and all that. But then what the medicine really helped me to reach places that all the other tools could not go, you know, and it was a really effective way. And also what you said, that giving that spiritual aspect, you know, that holistic, you know, it was so not so focused on or and didn't even understand what is that spiritual aspect, you know, or that divinity and how is that is within us, you know, and all these things. So it's, I think, totally reinformed the way I looked at healing and what is healing and what needs to be healed and where is that, you know, in the complexity of human beings. So yeah, how was it in your practice?
I would echo everything you said. I really resonate with everything you said. Absolutely. Like what healing is, my understanding of that changed and deepened dramatically. And so I'm always looking for more tools around that, because I do feel that trauma, not necessarily even trauma with the big T, you know, small traumas, challenging emotional circumstances, needs that weren't met, love that wasn't given, all of these things in our development and childhood and adolescence, they tend to be at the roots of what we're struggling with in the present. So I'm always looking for new ways to access that. But I also agree that, you know, for me, ayahuasca and plant medicine is the most powerful by far. I mean, I've looked everywhere, you know, meditation retreats in Myanmar, and, you know, alternative healing in Thailand, and South America, the Andes, everywhere I've gone and looked at different things, and I have not found anything, as incredibly powerful and healing and transformative as ayahuasca can be. And a big part of that is the physicality of purging. I mean, there's no way to reproduce that in a therapy office, removing the physical residue of all of these pains and traumas and experiences and toxins and everything. It's that to me is kind of it's like the secret sauce that it's special power that I don't think you can really find anywhere else.
Yes, absolutely. And how, the medicine is completely tailored to each individual and to each precise moment, always, like,
Yeah.
And that's something that can be hardly replicated, for sure, even though we are sitting in the same circle with the same drinking the same.
Yeah.
People have very, very different experiences and healing journeys, depending on where they are, and what do they need in that moment.
Yeah. Totally agree.
So, okay, I totally forgot what I wanted to ask, but I had such a good question. But anyway, I have more questions. So, when we talk about ayahuasca and the incredible experiences, of course, and the ceremony, and that is powerful experience, but I always say that your journey with this medicine starts way before you sit in the ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
When you answer that calling and you say yes to that, and a lot arises before, even like as a preparation, and
Yeah.
important, to go into it in a sacred way and in a good way. And that was something that I was fortunate that I was taught from the beginning, how to prep and honor. What does it mean, to prepare ourselves, not just physically, but spiritually and mentally, emotionally, for this experience. But then, I was not told about what's going to happen after, like nothing, and for a long time, I was like pissed off when the shipping wasn't like, why they never talked about the integration. It took me a while to understand that from their perspective, this is something non-existing and doesn't make any sense, because they are in that context, all the time. It's who we need this. But yeah, I learned in a very hard way, what is integration and why do you need that. So now I would say that that's kind of the longest and in a way the most difficult part of the process, and that's, like, people should get support and help with that. Definitely, I think, like, that's baseline. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. To me, it's very funny in the Amazon. It's like the locals, they'll come do ceremony, puke their guts out, roll around, scream. The next day they're back at work, just as if nothing happened. And they feel great, and they just kind of keep going. And it's a different cosmology, a different understanding as to what is ailing them. It's a different culture, it's a different worldview, and so they don't really, the concept of integration doesn't really make sense to them. That's like you said, it's just part of how they live and understand the world. But for us, not coming from that culture and environment, it's really important. And I always say that you don't do the ceremony for the experience of the ceremony. You do the ceremony for how it's going to impact your life. Right. Otherwise, then it's just entertainment. If you're doing it just for the fun or not so fun experience of being in ceremony, then that's just entertainment, right? But if you're doing it to change your life in a positive way, to heal something, to learn, to grow as a person, to connect more spiritually, then the ceremony is just the catalyst. The actual unfolding of all of that is in your day-to-day life after. So I agree, integration is really important. I think being as thoughtful with that, I've seen it from, many clients, guests coming down to the retreat center and seeing people's different approach to integrating and, ones that just went back to the life as normal, didn't change anything, and they're back in 6 months in the same shape, versus people who they made some big shifts in their life, stopped drinking, changed their diet, started a spiritual practice, changed some of the relationships, quit their jobs that weren't working. And then, I'll see them a year later and they have evolved as people. And that's really, to me, what it's about, is taking the energy and the opening that happens from ayahuasca, opens our energy, opens our consciousness, allows things to change if you take that action. It's about taking action to make changes in your life while you have this great tailwind of your energy is great, you feel much better, you've been lightened and cleared out. So you've got this huge tailwind coming out of ceremony to use that to make changes. And I do that still. If I'm struggling with something and I'm in ceremony, then I will always ask, what can I do in my day-to-day life as a practice? What change can I make to work on this further beyond what happened in the ceremony?
Absolutely. And just to mention what we always say here, that the medicine is not going to heal you, like nothing going to heal you, like only you can heal yourself. And that's what you were talking about, that people have to put energy and commitment and work into this and do those changes that will change their life, and I think, the medicine is definitely a great ally and a great catalyst to show us where you need to work on, what you need to work on, what you need to change, what you need to let go, what you need to transform. But it won't do it for you. And I think people, especially from the West, and this was my original mindset, is just give a pill that will, make it better. Like doing it for you, either that's a pill or a therapist or a plant medicine or whatever, like meditation or running, that something is doing for you. Like you need to do these things for yourself. And I think that's why many people get kind of disappointed, because they have this expectation that, the medicine will heal me, and then they give up drinking for a few weeks because they are in the ayahuasca afterglow, and then go back to their old patterns, and they say, okay, it didn't work for me, or I just need more medicine, and they lack the understanding that, hey, she's doing her part and now you have to do your part.
Exactly.
And that's so important for people to understand, and that's why we are doing this podcast and putting this information out there. And I learned, in the hard way as well, just drinking without integrating and coming into like a breakdown. It's a very, very difficult experience, that was, it was not necessary. I mean, everything is perfect in the end, and I chose this experience, obviously, but definitely you can do it in a different way. And I don't think that the more the better, I don't think that at all. I think the medicine totally changed my mind around that. And actually she taught me that the more whole you are and integrated and healed and aligned, the less medicine you need, and then you don't need medicine, and that's when you are well.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
That resonates with me. Two things that you said. One, that I actually use the same phrase, that the medicine does its part, you have to do your part. I 100% agree. And I think ayahuasca is something that the more you work, like the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. Yes, you can go in, no preparation, very little effort, and you can have a great experience, and there can be healing that happens, but you can do so much more and have real personal transformation and much deeper work and deeper healing and more wholeness if you participate in the process and prepare and think about what really needs to change, and work with it during the ceremony, and integrate afterwards, and work on yourself and making those changes and doing your part. 10 times more powerful and effective when you're participating and you're doing the work too, and not just relying on it to kind of, it does everything and I just sit back afterwards. So I definitely agree with that. And that's where I think therapy and ayahuasca is a very powerful combination, because you're getting a human guidance as well as plant spirit guidance. And you're able to keep working after ceremony with someone to go deeper into the issues that came up. And, ayahuasca will often show you what's still there, things that you still need to work on, things that need to be cleared in other ways. And then you have someone to do that with. So it's a great combination of doing your work with the medicine and the therapist. And then what you said about, sometimes more isn't better. I also agree with that. I do see people that kind of keep going back, but they're not actually growing. And there's something that can happen where actually, if you do more and more ayahuasca, but you're not working on changing those shadow parts on your own, they can crystallize and actually get amplified. And I've seen that too. And that's not a pretty thing. And I also saw a lot in Peru, people who would, go down there and kind of just get lost in the ayahuasca culture, and they kind of bum around Iquitos, and they're doing lots of ceremonies. But you talk to them and they look terrible and they sound terrible. And it's like, this is not working for you. I don't think it's good for everybody to do that. In my case, I had done so much healing work before I got down there, my own therapy, my own work. I was emotionally in a very solid place and had done a lot already. I was just looking for guidance on the next chapter, right? So I came in not as lost, let's say. I think if you go down there and you've got a lot of healing work to do and you just kind of get lost in that world, it's not great for a lot of people. For some people it can be, but I think in general, you're definitely better off doing a little bit, doing your work, going back to it much later. And I totally agree. The point isn't to get good at the ceremony. The point is to have a better life.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is so important to emphasize, I think, that how did it make your life better? What you are doing,
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, not just the medicine, like, does it make your life better? Are you more happy, fulfilled, at peace, at ease, with yourself, with the world, with others, or not, or you still in this toxic relationship, the same job that you hate, the same place where you've been when it's all started. So it's really, I think, that is when you bring that spiritual aspect and that side of it into the practical reality, and really you can measure, and this is deep therapy work, deep shadow work, trauma work. People are not equipped, to do this alone and process all this stuff. And especially with this particular medicine, I said it so many times on this podcast that it can bring up, serious trauma that was suppressed into amnesia and stuff. And I had experience with this multiple times, and people shock, go into a shock just from, and if you don't have container, if you don't have guidance, that sometimes, that either not going to be a healing experience for you. It can be a possibly re-traumatizing experience. For the people. So just really shouting out people, to have somebody to work with afterwards, to have to support, to have somebody to teach you certain tools, to navigate your own experiences. And you can learn those things. And having 2 or 3 sessions is not integration, as you said before. You had a year, and my program is also a year integration. And I have this experience in the last 6 years working with many people, that to people who come in and they are in transition, and they are like, I cannot go on like this anymore. So things have to change. And by the time things will change visibly, and we can see, okay, things did change, it will take minimum a year. That is my experience, because if you really fundamentally want to uproot things and transform things, that will take time, because it will come in layers, and you will need to do this work step by step. And if it would be released all at once, we would go crazy, like you cannot all at once everything. So and also, first, this is a very internal work, very energetic, very introspective. So you are working on the energetic levels, on the spiritual level, on the mental, emotional level, and there's no visible change in the first few months. A lot of the times, like, and the changes will appear later in the physical reality, so a lot of people, oh, nothing is changing, but hello, keep doing what you're doing and things will change. So that's another thing, that we are so impatient, and we are like, yeah, let's just release 50 years of trauma and conditioning, in like one day. That's not realistic, and but I do can say that if you dedicate yourself, and if you have support and guidance and container, within 1 year you can totally turn around your life, like completely, like 180-degree change. And that's not such a long time compared to lifelong suffering, I think. So just also mentioning it to people that wanting this quick fix, this is not a quick fix. Nothing is a quick fix, and if you're dealing with serious issues, you will need to spend some time, to work on them. What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I definitely. It's it's a catalyst. It's a catalyst for change. It can accelerate things. It can open things up. But that process of transformation and healing, it's a long one. And I think, yeah, a year is that's actually how I look at it in terms of the arc of the experience with ayahuasca is, a year of that, the energetic changes, like you said, manifesting into physical reality. That's how long it can take. And if you're participating in that, it'll go a lot better. Those changes will be more in alignment with who you want to be and the kind of life you want to live. And you can absolutely have profound transformation in that time, which, yeah, is not, in the grand scheme of things, is not a long time. But I agree, we are very impatient, and human time is not the same as spirit time, and so we want the change to happen immediately, but it is a gradual unfolding. And it's the same with therapy and any healing modality. I just think with plant medicine, it can be a lot faster, because it's an accelerant and a catalyst if you work with it the right way, but you still have to do your part. And yeah, it's it takes a long time, and if you've got deep healing work to do, oftentimes there may be more than one chapter. You do a big chunk of work and you're in a good place, and that lasts a few years, and then later more things come up and you realize, oh, there's a little bit more here to look at, and then you do another round, and that's great. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's just that it just means that healing is part of your life journey, and I think that can be very special also. I don't view it as a burden. Healing as part of your life journey can be a very beautiful thing as well.
Absolutely. I feel it's a never-ending journey. And I did think at the beginning that if I hear this and that, I'm going to be finally ready to focus, on other things in my life. And then I was like, okay, I don't think this is ever going to end. So let's organize my life, to be part of this. And of course, when people start to step on that path, it can be all encompassing and all overwhelming a little bit at the beginning. And I recommend people to take time off their work and their life, for a while, to focus on themselves and on this journey. But once, you start stabilizing, embody some of those changes, you learn, to use those tools in your own life and keep using them and keep journeying and moving forward, for sure. So what are some things that you would like to leave our audience with today, like something you feel passionate about, or you want to shout out about something? Like, this is the time to share that.
Well, actually, just based on what you just said, the other thing in terms of the healing journey is it comes with gifts. And I think that's important. I have so much compassion for people who are just starting on this healing path. Like you just said, it can be so hard in the beginning, overwhelming, and but it's worth it. It really is. And there are gifts that come with it when you have done the deep healing work and cleared things and you're able to be yourself more than ever. And your natural gifts come up. And I think that is one of the the benefits of the healing journey, is that you tap into what your natural gifts are, whatever that is, whether it's creatively or in work or in relationship. We all have gifts, and they get stymied or blocked when we're bound up in trauma and hurt and wounding. They can't unfold. You can call it your life path or your life purpose. All of that can come once you've unwound those hurts and wounds and traumas. So I think that it's important to hold that vision, that it does come with gifts.
Yes, thank you. I'm such a focusing on the shadow work part, all the time. So thank you for the reminder. And
Yeah,
that's so important. Why are we doing this? Because it is hard. It is not for the faint-hearted. Definitely a warrior path, like deep shadow work. So why? And that's that's certainly a lot of people actually come into my practice with this intention. I want to find my life purpose. Why am
yeah,
what are those gifts that I can contribute, and how can I do that? And for me, one of the biggest thing was just like I just had so much fear and anxiety because of things that I went through, and that like crippled me from the inside, and my whole relationship to the world and to other people was based on that fear and that anxiety. And doing this work and letting go more and more of that fear and those memories that were holding it, just allowed me to kind of drop into my body and into this life and be more open and connect in a different way, and having more loving, nurturing relationships just in general in my life. That I would say that was just like a huge, is something that I cannot explain to people, how you don't know how much you're holding and carrying until you start putting those weights off, and you realize
yeah,
I haven't been living, I haven't been here, I haven't been, and that's, of course, you feel that you are not feeling good. So you are knowing that something is not right, but you have no idea. So definitely, I would say for me, freedom from the past, freedom from fear and anxiety, um, and just being tapped into to myself, and having that anchor inside of my own being, instead of feeling so lost in the world we
yeah,
experience, and having that internal guidance system, having that connection, and navigating through that. And then that's like something that I could not have even imagined before. So there is definitely, I would do it like 100 times over, and that's why we keep doing it, and keep talking about it, and supporting others, because I think the only way out is through, but there is a way out, and that's the good news. And that's why, that's on the other side, I think freedom.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree.
Well, do you have any offerings right now that people can reach you? Your website is transcendentcouncil.com, right?
Yeah.
And
Um, yeah, I mean, I do, I specialize in this exact work that we're talking about, just like you. So people that are looking for integration or preparation for ayahuasca or other plant medicine work, basically, I like to help people who want to use psychedelics intentionally with purpose for healing. So that can look a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's much more kind of involved, long-term, counseling and therapy and work around that. Sometimes it's briefer support work, but that's definitely my passion, and that's my favorite kind of work to do. You know, I have a traditional therapy practice also, but this is definitely my favorite work, because things move so quickly. So much can happen. So much healing can happen. You're not just stuck in a rut. When you're working with, you know, ayahuasca, you're not going to be stuck. Things are going to move, and that's a wonderful thing to be a part of and to help support.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And we're going to include all your information where people can reach you. And I'm sure you're going to be back on this podcast because we are thinking along the very same lines. And yeah, I want to give platform, you know, through the podcast to other people who doing this type of work, because it's kind of hard to find an integration therapist who has proper training as a therapist, or you know, different tools. He has understanding of the Western, you know, psychology, also understanding of the shamanic practices, and have obviously experience with the medicine to the extensive level. And there is more training coming out now and more education, which is great. But yeah, I'm delighted, you know, to know another person that people can go to with confidence and trust, you know, if they need any support. So big shout out there. And thank you so much, Alex. It's to connect with you today. And I'm sure, the rest is
Thank you, Nina. This was really special, and I really enjoyed hearing your perspective too. It's nice to talk with someone that's in the same world and knows this work, and I resonated so much with what you said. So thank you for sharing as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and we are just reminding everybody that you are the healer and love is the medicine. And tune in for our next episode. Check out the other episodes of the podcast. We have a bunch out there now. We're having break on Clubhouse, our integration room for August, that we are back in September. But you can reach me, you can reach Alex and all the other people. You know, if you need support, connect with us, please, and share this video if you liked it, and see you in the next video. Lots of love.